Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. Necromunda Halls of the Ancients is here, or pre-ordered at least, and Games Workshop very kindly have sent me a few bits to take a look at early. And in this video, we're going to be painting some of the new Prospector Kyn. Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Baron of Dice, premium wargaming dice. Over 500 styles, over 4,000 customer reviews. Welcome to the best dice on the planet. Now that the Halls of the Ancients has gone up for pre-order, I can show off some of the cool things that Games Workshop sent to me early. I've already completed a video with a tutorial for the Squat Ironhead Trike, and I'll pop a little link in the video now. You may have already seen that one. When I first had squats, they looked like this and I loved them, and squats have made a bit of a reappearance recently. Votan through 40k, but from the Necromunda side of Warhammer, they are much more like their older version, or at least have that same feel anyway, and I'm really excited to get painting on this one. So this set is the new Ironhead Squat Prospectors Exo Kyn. You get 6 miniatures in the box, including 4 of the dudes in the awesome Exo armor. Now, I'm not going to do a really detailed unboxing here. You can look at pictures of the miniatures on the Games Workshop website. You can look at pictures of the sprues as well. But they went together super easy. They're very well engineered, very well put together, just like most modern day Games Workshop miniatures. It's worth following the instructions to make sure you don't make any mistakes. But these are a little bit more modular than some things, and as I said, super easy to put together. 2 identical frames within the box as well, and lots of extra heads and things, just like with the trike. So I'm looking at my spare bits. I'm looking at a future Votan project that I can maybe squatify and make them look a little bit more like the awesome Necromunda squat. So if you had plans similar to that, let me know in the comments. But while I wait to decide what I'm going to do, I built up one of the dudes here. He's primed black and ready for this painting tutorial. Now, this is Card Pterodon Grey from the Two Thin Coats range. They match up very well with Citadel paint. So if you go to the Transatlantic Games website, there's a really nice conversion chart on there, and you'll find that there's a good match for most things. No surprising who was behind this, with Duncan Rose behind this paint range, that they match up well with the Citadel paints, and they're great and they're really good. I can recommend them if you haven't tried them already. And what I'm doing here is building up a nice thin layer of grey, mostly top down, because I want to really capture a lot of that shadow that's underneath the miniature. So it's almost like a grey scale Zenithal, but quite a heavy one. I'm going in from the sides as well, because I want to make sure that it's a nice base for future paint layers afterwards. Next up, we have Model Air, and again, because I'm using the airbrush for these first 2 stages, I just love this white. It's so easy to use, it's so forgiving, a little bit of thinner, and then it goes through the airbrush fantastically. And if you've watched the trike tutorial, you'll recognize these stages, because the white armor on that trike I did in exactly the same way. So what I'm doing here is, again, focusing top down, but going in the middle of the armor panels. I'm trying to leave a little bit of that grey showing, so there's a bit of transition, and of course leaving that black in the shadows as I did before. If you don't have an airbrush, you could do each of these previous stages with a dry brush. The new style super soft dry brushes, circular motions, sort of build them up through the layers, and you'll get a similar effect. Or you can just go with a grey rattle can and paint in the white, or just go pure white with a rattle can. With that white layer down, it's time to start putting in the first base layers of metallics, and this is decayed metal from the scale 75 metal and alchemy range. I'm just going in here and doing a nice base layer over everything that I want to be metallics. We're starting here with that nice little circular saw blade on his left arm. Most of the rest of the metal areas are this large sort of backpack area with all of these tanks and valves and things. I'm just giving it a nice even coat all over. There's a few other little details that I'm picking out in metal as well. These little straps around the piping on the arms. There's also the grille on the little flashlights at the front as well. We'll come back to the metallics later, but while they're drying, I'm going to go in with Contrast Black Legion. And this is for everything that's under that white armor, all of the kind of rubberized area that joins the armor together. So you've got the backs of the knees, over the knees, a little bit around the hips and waist as well. It's just a matter of going around the miniature and trying to be quite careful here. I don't want to get this on the nice white armour that we've built up with that airbrush. Little bits in the crooks of the elbows around the front and areas like that. You pick it out all the way and it makes that white pop and stand out even more. Because you're going over a semi-white layer and we're using a contrast paint, you get a bit of a natural highlight that's coming through with that contrast and the Black Legion as well. Nearly done with that Black Legion now. I decided to paint one of the two wires or pipes on those arms black as well. I'm going to go something brighter for the top colour, but black for the bottom one. Now this is a Cullen Green contrast paint. I use this on the trike, on the uniform of the rider on there. And on that miniature, I also highlighted using some regular paints from the Two Thin Coats range as well. With this one, it's such a small area, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you why, really. So I'm using a slight bit of water on the brush. I can just go back over that contrast paint that I just applied and just take a little bit of it back off. And it gives you the effect of a highlight on there, which is really, really nice. It's just one of the cool things you can do when you're glazing with paints like this. And it looks great. It doesn't really need anything else, especially if we're going to add some oil paints later as well to weather this armour. This is everything we need. We don't need to do any more stages. The spot colour for this army is yellow. I'm just using some Iandan yellow here and just painting a stripe in on the top of the helmet. It's actually riveted anyway, there's lines on there, so I can just follow in between those lines and just give it a nice little bit of interest that breaks up the white a touch. This is Nazdrag yellow, another contrast yellow. I wanted something a little bit more striking on that other cable, so we've painted one black already and the top ones I'm painting in yellow. So this is Black Metal from the Metal and Alchemy range from Scale Colour, the same as the Decayed Metal, which we've already used for that base layer of metals, that coppery brown colour. And now that that's dry, we can do the next stage. And this is a sponging tool from Knott's Hobbies. There's a link in the video description, which you can purchase it through and actually get 5% off. And this is the sponge that they send with it, which is quite dense. I've been told very much like a makeup application sponge. And now I can just sponge this on rather than having to paint it on, and it gives it a nice kind of subtle layer that you can build up a little bit, but also leave a lot of that brown in the recesses, a little bit like when you do an airbrush dusting over the top. If I did airbrushing here, I'd have to mask off all the white on that miniature or paint these bits in sub-assemblies, and this just means I can just sponge it on. It's super easy and the effect is really nice. Much the same as I did with the trike. For those of you who watched that video, the top highlight is Game Air Silver, and I'm dry brushing this on because I want a slightly different effect. Not only am I just catching the edges of the metal areas just to give it that sort of top highlight, make it pop where the light would hit, I'm also allowing it to go over to the edges on the white armour as well, as if that paint has worn away a little bit. Now obviously you could paint that in great detail with darker colours and different layers, but this just really picks out the edges of the armour, adds some definition, adds sort of grim dark realism to it, which I think is really cool. But most importantly, it's super easy for such a nice effect. This is Argonaut Skin, the Kronos Flesh and Ares Flesh, a nice full triad from the Two Thin Coats range, and I'm using this as the triad of skin on all of these dwarves and hopefully onto the army if I get to go on and do the full project that I have in mind. And there's hardly any skin showing on this squat at all, it's just his face, and because he's got a beard and a helmet on, there's very little to see. So I'm just building up between the dark, the mid and the highlight tones really simply. Each layer decreasing slightly so the previous tone is showing through. So on a face, you're very much aiming for the top of the forehead, the nose and the cheekbones, and as you get to that top highlight, those little dots, those highlight areas get a little bit smaller. And these are Shyish Purple and Vulpus Pink contrast paints on my wet palette with a little bit of water added to thin them, and I'm using to add a little bit of interest to that skin. So the purple becomes the shade in the eyes around the top of the helmet where the shadows would be, definitely focusing around the sides of the nose as well, and where the skin meets the beard. The reddish colour, the pink, is perfect over the nose, just adds a little bit of warmth. You can put over the cheeks as well. It just gives some variation to the skin tone as an alternative to adding a wash. I don't feel I need that with the layers I've already added of skin tone. Now at this stage I like to paint in my eyes before I fully finish the skin. That way if I make a mistake I can go and fix it at that point rather than getting it perfect and then being really annoyed when I have to go back and redo it. So just dotting in a bit of black, a bit of white and then a bit of black again. And then in most cases I like to go back with my very top highlight of skin again and just pick out anywhere where that glaze of those purples and reds may have made it a little bit too dull and dark. So sometimes just back to the edges of the cheekbones, that kind of thing. Now back to the Two Thin Coats paints, I do recommend them. They are absolutely fantastic if you haven't tried them already. This is a Wizard Grey. I've got it thinned on my wet palette just so it can nicely controlled. And I'm just highlighting all those little black sort of rubber bits that joined in between the white armour panels. A lot of it's kind of tubular or there's ripples in it, so we're just painting very straight lines on the bits that are raised and showing. This is Phalanx Layer Yellow, so actually using a citadel pot for a change, not just Two Thin Coats. I'm just using this to highlight that Lyandan yellow, mostly because I don't have a colour this bright in Two Thin Coats at the moment, but very thin here. I'm just kind of glazing it and slowly building it up. I don't want any chalky brush marks in it. And then what I've got on the palette, just taking the opportunity to add a little touch of highlight to those yellow cabling. I decided to return with a little bit of Lyandan yellow contrast paint again and just darken the area that's slightly covered by the back of the armour where there'll be a little bit more shadow, and then just really add some definition to the edges of that stripe by doing some thin lines in that colour just to darken it down so that highlight is very much just in the centre. This is Cygor Brown contrast paint, a really nice warm, rich, reddish brown. I use this on the leather on the rider of the trike. This guy's not got any leather on him at all, so I can use this on his beard no problem without there being any clashing. Obviously it's going over the Zenithal miniature, so that as it runs into the recesses, well, you've got a little bit of a highlight showing through because of the nature of the way contrast paints work, and that will help me with the highlights afterwards as well, because I'll know where to aim my brush. And this is Cuirass leather and boar hide, which you'll have seen are the highlights I used on the trike for those leather areas. I'm using them on his beard here. So a few lines of the Cuirass leather and a few more of the boar hide afterwards. Now for some contrast warp lighting, which I love to use on my lenses and on my lights and things. And he's got these spot lamps on his shoulder, and yes, they could be yellow, but I've got the yellow on the helmet. Quite like the idea of a green light or a green lamp on there. I've already painted in the metal grills, so I'm just filling this in the gaps that are white on the front there. And then turning the model around, we have these little dials. I like the idea that they're semi-digital or lit from within, and I'm using this within those as well. Super simple, super easy. Again, I want a striking miniature on the tabletop, but it is a gaming miniature, so I'm not going to go too detailed. Back to the Cuirass leather, which is a bit like Rhinox hide. Back to the Knott's Hobbies sponging tool application holder, and I'm using some regular sponge, the kind you find in blister packs here, to do some regular sponge chipping here. This stuff's a lot more porous, a lot more broken up, so that you've got a little bit of paint on the edge of your brush, and just dab it on the miniature, and it leaves nice little brown marks as if it's been shipped back to its primer, or it could be dirt, whatever you want in your own head canon. But it really breaks up that white a little bit, makes it look a little bit grim and dirty and battered. Now these are already mixed oil washes, grease and dark mud, and if you watch the trike tutorial or many of my others, you'll have seen these used before. I'm using the dark mud on all of the metal areas. It's quite a deepish brownish colour, a bit richer than an Agrax Earthshade style wash, and the grease is a bit more sepia, but not as much as Seraphim Sepia, probably 50-50 mix between that and Agrax Earthshade. And I use these in place of regular washes just because I like the way they work. They're super easy to use when you buy these ready mixed ones. You do need to use an older brush or a different brush from your standard ones because you will knacker your brushes if you use them on your oil paints, but they're incredibly easy to use. And in many ways I use them like regular washes, so for the metals I'm pretty much putting them all over, but they run so much better into the recesses. They pull far less on those flat areas, and the beauty is you can wipe them away afterwards and they take a long time to set, whereas Agrax Earthshade, once it's dry, you probably have to go back in with the metallics again to brighten them up. When I get to the armour plate, as you can see here, I'm running it much more around the edges, allowing it go into the recesses there, because I don't want the white to be completely obliterated. If I do get it anywhere I don't want it, again, not an issue at all, because I can come back with a clean brush and some Artist White Spirit and tidy it up, and I'll show you that in a moment. So this is an AK fast dry thinner, which is the same as an Artist White Spirit, also Sansador if you've got an art shop near you. They don't smell as bad as the stuff you get from B&Q or your hardware store, and those things will be too harsh to use with these kind of paints. And all you do is put some on your brush that's now clean and go over those flat areas, and it will take away those oil paints where you don't want them, which is great. Now I'm doing this after a quick blast with a hairdryer to dry those oil paints a little bit, If you do it when they're too wet, you'll wash too much back off. You can leave this overnight in most cases and it will still come off as well. So you've got a lot of working time on these oil paints, and it's just a way to really kind of get into the detail and do what you want with it. The extra beauty is once they dry, it looks like the miniature's been weathered as well. They go nice and dry and really grimy, which just looks fantastic. Now back to the Game Air Silver. I'm just going to give a little bit of an extra dry brush after I've added the oils. I don't want to go all over the whole thing, but just add a little bit of pop back where the oils have dulled it down in certain places, really just to make it stand out, mostly on the corners and edges where the most wear would be. Now it's time for those finishing touches. I'm using some dry pigment on the base. I'm rubbing it into the texture on the base, which I've already added. I've not talked you through those processes. If you'd like to know what I added, pop a question in the comments and I'll tell you. But it's a mixture of Vallejo earth textures, a bit like your Sterling mud kind of stuff if you're mostly a Citadel user. It goes really nicely onto the bases. You can brush it onto the bottom of the feet, blow off the excess, and it stays there enough. You don't have to go in and seal it. I've added a tuft as well to the base just to add a little bit more interest. And now a little bit of blood for the blood god onto that sort of rotary saw arm. It just makes it look really cool. Less is more here with this stuff. Water it down a little bit, blend it out, and then build up with layers. Play around with it. If you get it looking realistic, it's great. If it looks like a 5-year-old on an accident with a red paint, then you know you've gone too far. But just build it up in layers and you'll be surprised how cool it can look. Then I like to finish off with a black rim on my bases, and we are done. But let's have a look at some proper pictures. Now I painted this guy at the same time as I painted the trike in the previous video. It made sense, the same colours, same time through the airbrush, saved time in my work process for making two videos very close together. And I thought I was going to have a lot more fun painting the trike. I've missed trikes from the days in Rogue Trader when I used to have them. They were just awesome, and I think that just said the coolest thing about squats to me back in that era. But I actually prefer this miniature. I think it's got so much character. I love the helmets. I'm so excited that there are spare helmets. I think there's 8 spare heads over the 2 packs, that I'm looking at a Votan set and wondering how much I can squatify it. And I've mentioned that a few times because I'm genuinely excited about doing that as a project later in the year once I finish my current old world project. So that'll be something to look forward to on the channel if you'd like to see that. I'm going to see if I can make it work. I'm not sure yet. I'll definitely be buying more of these Necromunda kits either way, because if I can't make my squat project work for a fun, relaxed game of 40k with my son, that's the only way I play 40k, then I'll be doing this for Necromunda anyway. I can't resist these models. I had so much fun painting them. They just got too much character not to buy more, so I'm definitely hooked. Let me know what you think in the comments of it anyway, and if you haven't already caught the trike video, do go and check it out. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm just having loads of fun painting squats for the first time in probably over 35 years. So thank you Games Workshop for sending those over to me early. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, drop a comment below. It really helps, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. Please check out all the other videos. There might be lots more things you like. There's a huge amount of painting tutorial and hobby videos, and also a lot of commentary on things on games as well. So there's a wide range of things there. If you'd like to support the channel even further, there's loads of links in the video description, including affiliate links and a link to my Patreon, which really is the best way to support the channel and helps me keep the lights on. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.